So this is Timothy Appnel, who is the principal product manager on the Ansible by Red Hat. So he came over with the acquisition, I would imagine, and this is the Ansible guy. So everybody in here, this is going to be, if you have some questions at the end after this presentation, this is going to be a guy to ask them to. So with that, I'll leave it to you, Tim.
Great, thank you. So my name is Tim Appnel. I'm from Ansible. I'm a product manager there. I've been in the IT industry for quite some time in different capacities in different industries. The last few years, I've spent a lot of time with Ansible, first as a contributor, later on as both a customer and an advocate at in an equity trading organization at a very large bank in America. I've joined Ansible as an employee, worked in the professional services group for about a year, and recently moved over to the product ownership team here. So what I'm going to talk about today is automation opportunities and how Ansible fits in with that. But before I do that, I wanted to do a bit of a recap and a quick summary of Red Hat management tools to give it some context on the broader or the more actually specific topic of automation. So we've heard this a lot today. It's been an ongoing theme that we've had, which is digital transformation is becoming an imperative. There's a great deal of diversity of new technologies, new workflows, new architectures out there, new infrastructure, hybrid cloud. Things need to be simpler, faster, and easier. Bottom line is the old tools and the old way of doing things simply are not going to work. You need new operations, process, and management there. From a management standpoint, Red Hat fits in very well with this type of new architecture, new way of doing things that are things like agile methodologies, things like getting the dev side to talk to the business side of the house. We're mostly focused on and looking at and working with the ops teams. How does the ops teams communicate and collaborate with the development side? How do they work with and collaborate with the business? How do they all work together? So why? Because ops has changed. Ops is no longer a group. It is a process. And it's a process that your entire organization needs to be plugged into. Technology is evolving constantly. Collaboration has become a requirement. Security and compliance is non-negotiable. Just ask Yahoo that. They're the latest victim of that mistake. And the platform is very much hybrid. Like I said, there's a great deal of diversity out there in the different tools at your disposal, the different type of architectures and things that you're working with, whether it's for legacy reasons or where you're trying to get to or somewhere in between. The bottom line is that digital transformation is the goal, and how you manage ops has to change along with it. If you're not thinking about how you're going to manage all this technology, how you're going to manage all this diversity, then you're going to have problems. You're going to struggle with this digital transformation. So how does Red Hat Ops do that? Well, here's some of the old ways and the new ways. We had systems, now there are services and apps. We had platforms, there's now hybrid. Things were siloed, we now have DevOps. My favorite one is, in the old way you had heroics, and now you have automation. No more manual, shell-tastic saves by your brilliant sysadmin that no one knows how to communicate with. So this is just briefly some of the management tools. When I talk about Red Hat management tools and where Ansible fits in here, and also I think complements all of these tools. I'll be talking a little bit more about them, but I'm going to take a little bit of time with these as part of my recap. First, there's Satellite, the tool we all know and love for getting patch management, rolling things out, provisioning, configuring at scale, standardizing your environment. It's also CloudForms. Hello. We also have CloudForms, which I don't think so much of as cloud management as much as service management, and putting that type of collaboration and self-service in the hands of your people. There's some great use stories out there. Some I think we've already covered, but a favorite one of mine is Verizon, large telco. They have started off, and this is also a great story of how Ansible and CloudForms are complementary to each other. They started out with Ansible. They started out automating how they build out development environments so that they could spin them up quickly. And once they had that automation done from the bottom up, they were able to go into CloudForms and do that top-down management to manage how and who rolls out different environments and that type of self-service automation that and management that CloudForms does so well. And then one other one I'd like to talk about we're very big fans of is Insights. If you haven't seen Insights, please check it out. My manager likes to say that it's pretty magical in that what Insights is doing is it's trolling, I should say trawling, not trolling. It doesn't troll. They're very nice people over in the Insights team, I promise. They're trawling all this data and doing predictive analysis that they're able to look at your environment. What do you have? What firmware are you running? What network cards? All sorts of information like that. And then based on Red Hat's collective knowledge of and that they're bringing in from the outside and its own internal use, they're able to predict where you might have a problem and when you might have a problem. Things like, oh, you're running that RAID, you have that RAID card with this firmware, which is known to have a problem and cause a kernel panic within the 150 to 180 day range. Things of that nature that Insights can give you. Another way that's Ansible's been very complementary is that they right now have done a POC, which after it identifies such a problem, it can produce and give you a Ansible playbook that you can run to remediate what it found. All right, so that was my quick overview. Let's talk about automation and how Ansible fits into that right here, or in that space and with these other Red Hat tools. So our philosophy is, and this is again something to just keep harping on, an ongoing theme of today's presentations, is every business is a digital business. Tech is driving innovation and tech is key to the future of almost every business. In fact, every business, I would argue, out there, that if you can't deliver software fast, your business just can't deliver. And that goes across a wide range of different architectures, hybrid cloud, all those sorts of things. Another thing that we feel very strongly about, and this is at the root of everything that we do at Ansible, and it's a core philosophy in how we've designed our tools and we constantly talk about, is that complexity kills productivity. And it's not just in how we design our tools, and it's not a market slogan, but we really do believe that complexity is the enemy of innovation. Which is why that enterprises are looking to automate and use DevOps tools out there to try to wrestle down and manage that complexity and to streamline that complexity to increase their productivity. And one other thing we like to say is that when you automate, you accelerate. We love to do the repetitive, mindless, tedious work that people really hate. Probably many of you hate to do yourself. Our belief is that when you automate, you not only accelerate, but you free up your biggest and most precious resources, which is your own people and their expertise. You free up their time and you give them the opportunity to do the things that really matter, that really will help move your business forward, rather than getting stuck in the redundant day-to-day manual tedious type of work that was part of the old way of doing things when you had paper run books and crusty shell scripts and handwritten Perl scripts by someone who isn't even a coder or has long left your company. I say that out of experience, by the way. So these are just some examples of how some of our customers have gone on record, how automation has accelerated what they do. We have J.Crew. Used to take them 5 hours and 6 people sitting in a room to get anything done. Now they've gotten it down to 5 minutes. They can now set up, do productions that instead of every instead of every 2 weeks, they can do it every day. So their first 3 customers took them 2 weeks to provision. Now they can do 510 minutes. And we also have Riot Games that take what used to take 4 days worth of work, now they can do in 4 minutes, all because they went through, automated what they've done, and now it's just a repetitive thing that they can run at will. Okay, so what is Ansible? So we've talked enough about the virtues of automation and the philosophy of why Ansible, but now what is it? Ansible is actually a few things, depending on the context. It's a simple automation language and an engine that can describe your IT infrastructure in a human readable, human meaningful sort of way through something that we call Ansible playbooks. It also is Ansible Tower. Ansible Tower is our enterprise tool for allowing teams to collaborate and coordinate your automation in order to give management a way to track what is happening and who has access to do different automation tasks within your company, things like that. I should also mention that Ansible Tower provides a UI and a RESTful API, where our core automation engine is a command line tool. So what Tower brings are all the things that command line tools don't do very well. More on that a little bit later. So a couple, I've already talked about this first principle. A few principles, though, that really differentiate Ansible and that we really hold dear to our hearts in what we do. Ansible is simple. You can get productive very quickly. You have it's human readable automation. People don't need that use Ansible or first pick up the playbooks don't need to have programming skills. They don't really need to have been familiar with Ansible. They can look at these playbooks and get a sense of what is it going to do, what's the automation going to do. Great thing to show management. Like I said, I came from financial services, to be able to show an auditor that pull out a playbook, they immediately know what you've been doing, how you remediate things, how you roll out things, and whatnot. It's also very powerful in that Ansible can do a lot of things. We often get lumped into configuration management, but in fact, we actually do a lot more. We can do things with app deployment. We can do things with cloud provisioning, different forms of workflow orchestration. So we can do the entire life cycle through dev, QA, all the way out to prod in many different ways and in many different areas. It's not just servers for us anymore. We're doing a lot with network automation and containers, all things I'll talk about. And then a third very important thing, it was the key reason why I first picked up Ansible where I worked, was that it's agentless. You can get up and running very quickly because it doesn't require you to install an agent and pre-configure every server you're going to manage. You just need a SSH connection and the credentials to connect to any box, and you're pretty much good to go, whether that's Windows or Linux. We can handle that. We can also handle network equipment now at this point and containers. So a little bit more about Ansible Tower. Tower empowers teams to automate. It sits on top of our core engine and provides the control and gives you the knowledge and allows you to do delegation. So it's role-based access control. It is the ability to manage credentials, give someone the access to run and use credentials, but not actually see or access those credentials. It's the ability to track and audit who ran what, when, what happened when that particular job ran. Details like that all get captured by Tower. These are all things that command line tools don't do very well. And the other is, and last thing, is the ability to do a certain amount of self-service, the ability for your ops team to put together, here's how we're going to roll out things, and when the dev team needs an environment, they can go somewhere, pick from a few pre-selected options and say, run. Don't bother me, don't call me, just go, you can go run this playbook, pick from those, do it yourself. So Tower takes teams further and faster. It accelerates innovation while it scales simplicity across your teams, across your organization, across regions. And it gives you that accountable automation. You have all those type of reports that you can see who was doing things when. One thing I should add to accountable automation, one of my colleagues is at Splunk Conf right now. I don't know if there's any Splunk users out there. We just announced an integration with Ansible Tower and Splunk, that what Ansible Tower is doing can be fed right into Splunk, and then you can correlate it and query that against what you have in Splunk. It's just one of the different ways that we use our RESTful API and integrate with other tools. And the last thing I should mention is that it's community-driven. Not community-driven that it's open source. I'm sure someone's going to ask me that question when we get to those. But community-driven in that it unifies your teams and helps them collaborate and communicate. They can all look into Tower and see what the devs did, what the ops teams can see what the devs teams did. The ops teams can communicate and change things through Tower that the dev team then can benefit from. As I said, community-driven. At its core, Ansible's automation engine has been open source. GPL3 has a huge, vibrant community. Report just came out on GitHub that we were way up the chain in the amount of contributors that we've had. One stat I always love to point out is that over 2,500 people have sent us a pull request that are inside the Ansible automation engine. So great stuff. And yeah, a lot of different ways that we've worked with our community. We really appreciate our community and would not be where we are today without it. One thing I should point out is these events that we have called Ansible Fests. So I can put up this ad here. I know it's not exactly next door or even in the same country, but I'm from Brooklyn myself. I flew up here. It's not a scary flight at all. So please come join us if you can. Stop by, see me. I can maybe give you a promo code if you're interested in going. We go a lot deeper. This is very much for the community and for developers, so we do a lot more technical talks. I'll be speaking there on something a bit more technical than I am today. So it's a lot more get your hands dirty. So if you're interested in Ansible or you're working with Ansible and want to learn more, this is a great event for that. So I just want to put these up here and say, don't take our word for it. We're getting a lot of coverage from different analysts out there. Make an inquiry if you have a relationship with analysts like Gartner and 451 Research and companies like that. Communication is the key to DevOps. Ansible we think of as the language of DevOps because it allows everyone from the test, from dev, test, QA, through operations, and then to include management, outsourcers, and auditors, all to communicate and collaborate and to work together. And we're the only automation engine that can do that in a human-readable way and do the entire life cycle in one tool. So there's a lot of enterprise impact to that happens at both team level and across your entire enterprise when you automate with Ansible. On the team side, save time, your team's more productive, your resources have the time to innovate and move forward rather than stuck in the day-to-day redundancy. They make fewer mistakes and errors. And we find it improves people's job satisfaction. We find people that are using Ansible are so happy to not be doing the tasks that they hate to do. They figured it out, they automated it, they run a playbook. When they need to, great, it's done, they move on. On the enterprise side, it helps overcome complexity. It can help give a common platform to bring all these different your whole diverse portfolio of tools that you're using and assets and environments that you have out there and frees up your valuable resources for more innovation, an ongoing theme here. You also have increased accountability and compliance, that we have all those reports tracking who's doing what in your infrastructure, so you can keep an eye on that. And it just creates a culture of success where you have teams that can talk and collaborate and work together. No more of the siloed fiefdoms happening. So Ansible is a tool that can bring all these different things together. But Ansible itself is not an island onto itself, especially under the Red Hat family. A big announcement that we made at the Red Hat Summit is that Satellite will provide an option to Ansible in its next release. Currently today, Satellite, I believe it's 6.2. By later this year, maybe early next year, I've heard, Ansible is going to ship as an option to Satellite. So people using Satellite are not forced to use Puppet. If they want to use Ansible, that will be a supported option and something that's built in for your use. Another way that Ansible is working closely with the rest of the Red Hat family is in CloudForms. One way that we're doing that is that you can use Ansible to extend CloudForms. We find that is a much easier way than writing Ruby modules. Now you can have CloudForms call out to Ansible Tower and do automation on your behalf so that you can develop in Ansible instead of having to write Ruby code or find a resource that knows Ruby code. We just find that to be a much more streamlined, easier way, easier to learn means of doing that. And it also allows you to reuse the vast Ansible ecosystem. We have, as I had up on one of my previous slides, we have hundreds of these modules that you could think of as tools in your tool belt, and they're constantly adding more. I think the previous stable version was almost at 500. The release that we've just gone into feature freeze on is up over 600. In one release, we've added that many tools, and it seems every day we get a few more pull requests for new modules that are being given to us by the community and our partners. So CloudForms and Tower together simplifies composite services, but it removes the need to creating golden images, the ability to spin up and provision images and then to configure them as part of one integrated step and do things that are cross-cloud and portable. So we continue to automate as part of the Red Hat family. Areas that we are investing in heavily right now include Windows. Believe it or not, we're Red Hat doing Windows. That was actually to Red Hat's credit after we were acquired. Job one, we were told, was to increase, bless you, was to increase and enhance our Windows support. So we're out there to help you with your hybrid existing environments, even if that means doing Windows. So it's been an area that we've been investing in, and we've gotten a lot done there lately. Another big area, huge boom of interest has been in network automation. One thing that we found when Ansible is out there, and traditionally we're lumped in with managing servers or maybe virtual servers or VMs, is that there was a great deal of pent-up demand from the network ops teams that wanted to do net ops that started trying to use Ansible to do that. So we said, okay, maybe we should help these people. So we've hired up a team of network engineers that have been rolling out modules to let you automate not only virtual networks, but actual physical hardware, things by Cumulus and Arista and Cisco, all the major players out there. You can now create automation for rolling out firewall changes or setting up switches and whatnot. And another area that we've been very busy in and seeing a great deal of an uptick in interest is Ansible containers, Ansible and containers. We actually have a project called Ansible Container. The code first got released in May, and by June we already had a few hundred stars on GitHub on that repo. We didn't even have working code at the time. We've since then released a version or two. That's a very interesting tool if you're interested in containers and container automation. I suggest you check it out. It's a very interesting tool because I'm biased, but we find that when you're never greenfielding, even with containers, everyone here probably has legacy that isn't container, and how do you automate that? And then how do you use those assets with containers? Right now, if you use a tool like Docker Compose, you're left trying to recreate your automation for containers. So we think that we can do better. So we've come up with a way to leverage Ansible playbooks and all the modules that we have to let you compose and build containers and then also deploy them to places like OpenShift. So that's an area that we're seeing a lot of new activity going on out there, and it will continue. I know already we've added modules for Atomic that haven't rolled out yet, and it'll be doing a lot more building out our Kubernetes support. We already have some there, but it's not entirely complete. So If you have any questions about that, again, stop me, it looks like we're going to have some time for questions at the end. I'd be glad to answer any of those. And yeah, so this is the way you can get started with Ansible if you're not already using us or that you're not a customer already. We're constantly out there doing these type of events. We also have free webinars. We have things like Ansible Fest going on. A lot of white papers, things like that. If you want to try out Tower, just go to that URL. You can get a 10-node license that way. We have Vagrant images, ways to spin up AMIs and AWS, things of that nature that make it even easier for you to try it out. And I think with that, yeah, here's some more information about management tools, how to find Ansible by Red Hat. You obviously found Red Hat if you were here. Satellite cloud forms and insights. So with that, I'd like to open the floor to any questions anyone might have about Ansible automation or management tools.
All right. Thanks, Tim.
Yep.
Is it Tim or Timothy?
Tim.
All right, Tim.
Mom likes Timothy, but yeah.
I don't want you associating me with your mom, so
Right.
we're good.
Yeah.
All right, so Mark is going to come up and set up some questions right over here. Hold on. Let me go
Yeah, sure.
with the air conditioning now going in overdrive.
So for virtual or physical Linux environment provisioning, what are the advantages of Ansible over Kickstart running on satellite? If you have all your Kickstart profiles already set, with the click of a button, you can provision a virtual or a physical
Yeah,
environment.
there is a certain amount of overlap. In my experience, we have a broader, what I believe is a broader range of the different things that we can cover. But you could be we try to be as flexible as possible, like a Swiss Army knife, that if you find Kickstarter's working for you, go for it. That's great. If you're finding that something like Kickstarter has limitations or there's something else you need to do that it doesn't do, we can also provide, hopefully we've provided modules that would help you do that, what you need to get done, whether it's with a different cloud provider or different Linux or whatever.
Tim, just one of those things, though, is like, for example, you have the Kickstarter and all that sort of stuff, but wouldn't one of the benefits be that by doing it with Ansible, some of that might be reproducible in other types of environments, you might be linking into other types of automation, whereas if you're just using that technology, you're kind of pinned in maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it can provide flexibility that you are free to go away from that tool or free to move to a new cloud provider or free to move to another package manager or whatever it is.
And the same skill set could be used to provision other environments like Windows, for example.
And possibly some of the same playbook operations on the config and deployment side once you're provisioned.
All right, we have another question.
Can Ansible replace something like Control M or Title or job schedulers, the Ansible Tower?
I'm sorry, what was the list of tools?
Control M or Title or some other job scheduler that run the entire operation?
It can. It does have scheduling capabilities in it, but it's not meant to directly replace those or take those on head-to-head. I guess it would depend on how you're using those tools. I have been asked that question about Autosys, which I believe is also in that group of tools. And where I was at, the bank I was at, we used Autosys to kick off Ansible jobs. That was because that was the tool, that was the policy, and so that's what we went with. Ansible tools are flexible enough to let you do either. We don't force you to buy in entirely our way of doing things. Sure.
So I noticed that since Ansible is introduced, looks like there are a lot of competition between Ansible and other Red Hat products. For example, for the configuration management, looks like there's some competition with Puppet, which is built into the satellite. And also for the, you just mentioned about that container rebuild, looks like there's some competition between this and OpenShift or Jenkins, Docker, build procedure. So how do you look at the future of Ansible? Is it going to be take over everything, or is it going to be, coexist with all the existing tools? How do you look at that? Thanks.
Sure. We are working towards coexistence. We are not looking...
Good answer.
Thank you, you're welcome. No, seriously, we are. That is an honest answer and a sincere answer. We are working with the OpenShift team more. We've added the support into Ansible Container to deploy to OpenShift. I personally have been working with the OpenShift team, the developers themselves, on how to leverage Ansible more. It's a little known fact that before even the acquisition of Ansible, OpenShift was using Ansible Core as its installer and for some of its management operations. When you're doing that stuff with OpenShift, you're actually running Ansible. So we're looking for more and more ways now that we're part of the family. Ansible hasn't even been with Red Hat for a year. We're just coming up on a year. So there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of ways that we're trying to work more closely together. To your question about satellite, I'll just point out Red Hat does not own Puppet. So I'll just leave it at that.
All right, any more questions? We still have a few minutes. We're a little ahead. All right.
Usually I run long.
Yeah, exactly. So we caught you. So I think now that we're in a fridge, as opposed to the oven earlier this morning, everyone's moving a little quicker. All right, I think one of the key things that as I talk to customers, one of the things they like about this is that we seem to really be focused on what is the best tool for the job. And that's why we're supporting Puppet. That's why we have Ansible. CloudForms has some automation in it that then is complementary and stuff like that. So I don't think we're really trying to position our customers in an either-or position, right?
Right.
So,
and very much the Ansible strategy is to continue supporting other operating systems, other tools outside of just the traditional Red Hat space, Ubuntu, Windows, network equipment.
wow, you actually said Ubuntu? Really? No, I'm joking. No, but absolutely, but that's the benefit, right? It's a hybrid cloud, and when we say hybrid, we really mean hybrid, right? So,
Yes, we do.
all right. Any more questions for Tim? All right, we're good.
I'll be
Thanks.
around if you think of any. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Tim. Okay, we're just going to leave it to Mark. We've been introduced multiple times, so I think we're all getting to know him well. There you go, Mark.